أرسل فرعون في المدائن حاشرين إن هؤلاء لشرذمة قليلون فأرسل فرعون في المدائن حاشرين إن هؤلاء لشرذمة قليلون وإنهم لنا لغائظون وإنا لجميع حاذرون فأخرجناهم من جنات وعيون فأخرجناهم من جنات وعيون وكنوز ومقام كريم كذلك وأورثناها بني إسرائيل فأتبعوهم مشرقين فلما تراءى الجمعان قال أصحاب إنا لمدركون قال كلا إن معي ربي سيهدين قال كلا إن معي ربي سيهدين فأوحينا إلى موسى أن اضرب بعصاك البحر فانفلق فكان كل فرق كالطود العظيم وأزلفنا ثم الآخرين وأنجينا موسى ومن معه أجمعين ثم أغرقنا الآخرين إن في ذلك لآية وما كان أكثرهم مؤمنين وإن ربك لهو العزيز الرحيم صدق الله العظيم.
صدق الله العظيم وبلغ الرسول الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. We welcome our imams from Collin County, first Imam Imam Abdul Rahman Bashir, Imam Arsalan Haq, and Imam Nadeem Bashir and Imam Azhar, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this gathering and to explore from the treasures of Ashura that we are in need for it in these days, especially when people forget about their history and the blessed history of this ummah, that inshallah bi'idhnillah secure happiness and secure progress for those who follow the steps of the righteous people and the prophets along the history. So inshallah, I'm the host and our imams are the ones inshallah who explore the treasures of Ashura and the benefits from this day that, as we mentioned, we are still in need for it. And we'll start with our beloved Imam. I always call it the fruit of any gathering. We start with Imam Abdul Rahman Bashir, the Imam of Harim Masjid. And we start by, inshallah, trying to let him highlight the identity of the Muslim Ummah, which is a lesson that we learn from the story of Ashura, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we all know, when he came to Al-Madinah and he found the Jewish community fasting in the day of Ashura, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was teaching us a lesson that if he's alive, he would fast on the 9th and the 10th. The absence of the Muslim identity is one of the diseases that unfortunately many of our youth and young men are suffering from. So from Sheikh Abdul Rahman, inshallah, we'll learn how to emphasize this point and tackle it, inshallah, in minutes, inshallah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد، رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So, to take a crack at preserving, protecting our Muslim identity, to fully understand it, to fully absorb it, develop it, and carry it out all in 5 minutes. No pressure. Right? So, subhanAllah. Tonight, inshallah, you're going to hear from our respected imams around me. You're going to hear different aspects of the significance of Ashura, the different messages that we can derive from it, the different lessons, the different angles that all pivot around and revolve around what we call and know as Ashura, the 10th of Muharram. Some of it has to do with, like what I'm going to be sharing with you. I'm going to be sharing with you one of those many angles, and that is the angle of distinction and uniqueness. So when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, and actually even before that, the day of Ashura, which is the 10th of Muharram, this was a particular day that was dignified, and fasting of that day was observed. Get a load of this. Even of Jahiliyyah, by the pagans nonetheless. And as I call the Jahiliyyah days, the J days, right? So from the J days, the Quraysh revered this particular day, and they would also fast on this day. And the Prophet ﷺ, growing up in Medina, having observed this, it was something that was very normal to fast on this day, and the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned virtues about this. The Prophet ﷺ, not only himself, but he instructed the companions to also fast on this day. Now, what was the reason behind Quraysh fasting on this day? Well, some mention that their actual practice of observing that day and fasting finds its traces back through to the Yahud and the Nasara. Because as I will share with you, when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, noticed another group of people observing the fasting. So the Prophet ﷺ, initially before the mandate was actually obligatory, it was necessary, it was one of the days that it was necessary for Muslims to fast. And then when the mandate of Ramadan came, after the Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ made it optional. Right? From whoever wants fast, whoever doesn't, have lunch that day. You know? So this was a day that was held in reverence by the Prophet ﷺ along with the Sahaba, and when they came to Medina, a few months after the Hijrah, when the month of Muharram came around, the Prophet ﷺ noticed that he found فَوَجَدَ الْيَهُودِ صِيَامًا. He found that they were all observing this day in fast. And not only that, but it is mentioned that the Jewish society in the city of Medina, they had considered that day as a day of celebration to the point where they would have their women dress up and diamond up, bling up, to show their to express their gratitude and celebration on that day. And when the Prophet ﷺ inquired, what's the reason y'all are fasting this? Like, why are you fasting this? And they said that this is the day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala liberated Musa and his people from Fir'aun and his people. And therefore, we fast this out of showing gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this liberation. Right? And in other narrations, it's mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, that the Jews replied that this was the day that Nuh alayhi salam, the ark of Nuh alayhi salam was saved from the floods on that day. So initially, the attitude of the Muslim society interacting with the Jewish society in this new city that was founded, now Medina, was that a lot of their practices would align with, right? The concept of practices would align with the Jewish society. Fasting has been described upon you, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِكُمْ, just like those before you. The Muslims found themselves praying in the Jewish society was praying. So there were a lot of similarities, and that was a way to kind of endear the Jewish society, to show them kind of like a common denominator, that listen, we all come from the same teachings. But then as time went on, what was one of the first distinctions that came was the Qibla was changed. And then slowly, as time moved on, and as the Muslim society became more stronger, right? In every understanding of the word, not just the physical aspect of being strong, but as they started bonding and became a stronger, close-knit community and started gaining footing, slowly, more and more distinctions were instructed by the Prophet ﷺ. And it got to a point where the Yahud would say that this guy, this Rajul doesn't find anything common with us except he starts to oppose it. And slowly, this distinction started to find its way into the Muslim society. And one of the last things before the Prophet ﷺ's departure was the Prophet ﷺ instructed his ummah that, and the way he instructed was like this, that if I am alive to see next year, then I shall fast on the 9th as well. خَالِفُ فِيهِ الْيَهُودِ سُومُوا يَوْمًا قَبْلَهُ أَوْ يَوْمًا بَعْدَهُ. Create, be distinct and unique from the Jewish society, fast a day before it or a day after. And if you look at it, this is where I bring in the identity part. We think as youth or as adults or as whatever phase in life that we find ourselves in, we think that trying to figure out what our identity is means that we are different from everyone else around us. And guess what? Not everyone wants to be different. Being different from everyone else, being like me growing up, and Imam Adhar can testify to that since we were classmates, always being the guy that was never picked on the soccer team, or I was like at the end and they just had me on the field to go and get the ball. That wasn't a good feeling. Feeling left out, feeling on the sidelines, feeling different, alienated, isolated. That's not, that concept of being different is very hard to swallow, and it takes a lot of dedication and commitment. And you know what? I'm going to be overweight, right? Yes, that's what I want to be in life, right? There's nothing that's going to motivate me otherwise. But when we talk about our life, I want you to think of this identity as not being different, but being unique. Being unique and having a one-up on everything else that is going on around us. What we or what society thinks as the norm, to be above that means being unique. And subhanAllah, as a Muslim, look, Islam is such a beautiful religion that governs, but it guides every single way of our existence. Not just in our actions, but our reactions, our interactions, our transactions, our social interactions, and even physically, okay? We are unique in the way we utilize our God-gifted faculties and talents. We are unique in the way we use our eyes, the way we use our ears, the way we use our tongue, the way we think, how and what we believe. That's what makes us unique. And let me go as far as to say that how you clean yourself after relieving yourself. Even in that, as a Muslim ummah, we are unique. And it takes courage to be unique. It takes courage to be unique. And, subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ has instructed us to be unique and on the level of uniqueness and the emphasis of uniqueness. Some things that you have to be unique in, and some things it's sunnah to be unique in. You know what I mean? So this uniqueness is something not to let ourselves feel alienated, sidelined, or different. It's something that makes us unique. It's something that makes us a limited edition, right? And when something unique is out there, right, not just different, but people look for uniqueness. And if you look at the ummah at large, subhanAllah, we should take pride in the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this uniqueness. And this is one lesson that we learn from sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That yes, the Muslim ummah, right, they were fasting the Ashura from before, even in Medina, for the entire lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, pretty much. And right before the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam left, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam left with us what? A lesson of being unique. Of being unique. And standing out. And do we need to stand out on the day of judgment in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And that standing out and being in a unique place on the day of judgment, being under a unique shade on the day of judgment, being under a unique banner of the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being under a unique in a unique line, receiving the water from the Hawd of Kawthar from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is what it means to be unique. Something that transcends not just our existence here, but something that we will be proud of the most on the day of judgment.
Just we want to, brothers, that there is no firestone. Stay away from these areas that is prohibited to park. Jazakallah khairan. Remove your car, inshallah, immediately if you park in the wrong area. Secondly, we shouldn't forget our brothers, Muslims and non-Muslims, who are in the areas that Florence hurricane is getting closer and hitting them, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save the lives of everyone and to bring them back, Ya Rabb al-Alameen, to their cities and to their places. That inshallah, our beloved Imam Bashir will back, which we need for. We had a misunderstanding about it. We think that Islam is a new religion, but Islam is the same religion that Adam alayhi salam, Nuh, Ibrahim, Yaqub, Yusuf, Noah, all the prophets and messengers came there and they delivered the same message. Also, we live in a Muslim country and we have neighbors, we have classmates that we should show our respect and we should get together to serve humanity. It's an important problem, and I know it's really hard to bring a mic and tell him to talk in 5 minutes about the broad. Yeah, because we are restricted with time and only one time for Muslims here and research, inshallah. We want to learn. So inshallah, we will inshallah stick to time, inshallah. Coming for our beloved Imam Nadeem to support this inshallah.
By the way, Imam Rahman, you are very late because you took 10 minutes.
And by the way, no relationship, so I just want to throw that out there.
11 minutes. So, begin with when we study our Islamic history, the history of the Anbiya, the time between Isa and the time between the Prophet, the gap was very significant. By the time Rasulullah came as a prophet, we all know the situation and the religious landscape of Arabia. And keeping that in mind, when Rasulullah came about Islam a new religion, does not mean Islam does not have different ahkam. There are certain things that were given to the Ummah of Rasulullah that were not given to the previous Ummahs, such as that the earth has been made as a masjid and as a means of purification that was made for the Ummah of Rasulullah and not for any other Ummah. When we talk about the mal ghanima, the spoils of war, in the past, people were not able or they were not allowed and permitted to take the spoils of war and benefit from the spoils of war, but that was made lawful for the Ummah of Rasulullah. So when we talk about the religions of all the Anbiya, yes, Islam was different in terms of ahkam. However, when we talk about the primary legacy that every single prophet left, that was the legacy of Tawheed. When Ibrahim ﷺ was in Mecca, he established the legacy of Tawheed. Every single prophet taught Tawheed. So in that essence, when Rasulullah ﷺ came to Mecca, during the Meccan era, Rasulullah ﷺ revived the legacy of the prophets. And when Rasulullah ﷺ migrated to Medina, he made an effort to protect the legacy of the prophets. And because he was able to protect the legacy of the prophets, the Sahaba were able to keep that legacy alive. And alhamdulillah, till today, this deen and this legacy of the prophets has been still protected. When Rasulullah ﷺ migrated to Medina, as Imam Abdurrahman Bashir was mentioning about, the initial, when the Prophet and the Sahaba initially came to Medina, there was no significant differences between the Muslim community and the Jewish community. Because if you remember, till then, in fact, till the 18th month after Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims were praying towards Masjid al-Aqsa. And not only that, fasting had not been prescribed till then. And there were many other things there were some similarities. And this is why the Medinan phase was truly the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He established this deen. He truly set the standard for this deen. And we all know that when a nation is first developed, when a nation comes into existence, the very first thing that you do with that nation is that you create a capital and a marja for that nation. And when this nation was coming together, this nation of Islam, not that nation of Islam, the nation of Islam and this state of Islam, then what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did was that He created the capital, He moved it for the Muslims from Jerusalem, and He made it Mecca. And as soon as Mecca was made as the Qibla, as the Marja, then slowly and gradually you will see the differences and the distinction between the Muslim community and the Jewish community. But one thing we do learn from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that all the Anbiya, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned when he saw the Jews, according to one riwayah, they were fasting, and according to one riwayah, they were only creating, or they had a festival. So when the Prophet ﷺ saw this, he said that this is something that we saw Musa alayhi salam doing, and the Prophet alayhi salam said that we are closer. Nahnu ahaqqu bi Musa, we are closer to Musa, and therefore the Prophet ﷺ, he prescribed the Muslims to fast on this day. So this is in one way reviving the legacy of the prophets. And now going to the subject of social justice and living in this country and so forth. Of course, I cannot cover this in 2 minutes. But the only thing I can say is this: either you're going to be making a difference in your society, or you are simply just one of those people who is a spectator. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not approve of spectators. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see that we are making a difference in our society. When Rasulullah came to Medina, he never said anything to the Jewish community. He simply said to the Muslim community that we are more closer to Musa alayhi salam, hence we should be fasting. He never approached the Jewish community. He never criticized them. He never said anything to them. And keeping that in mind, living in America, when we are surrounded with so many different ideologies and so many different mentalities, it is extremely crucial that when we are connecting with these kind of people, we are not stepping on their toes, we are not being rude, we're not being judgmental, we're not being disrespectful. Because one last thing I will say is this: I one time went to an MSA event, and there was a certain person who was giving a talk, and someone had asked a question about Islam, and the person was very critical in his approach. Extremely disrespectful, I would say. And this person, instead of simply answering the question and diffusing this tension that was growing, because this person had asked a question, and this person just so happened to be a professor too, and he had a lot of his supporters and his fans there, what happened was that this imam was, instead of diffusing the situation, he actually got caught into it, and he actually made some objections against their religion. And it reminds me of the ayah of the Quran where Allah says, لا تسبوا الذين يدعون من دون الله فيسبوا الله عدوا بغير علم. On one hand, you have a Muslim who understands very well what is right and what is wrong. And sometimes people are going to try to light a fire under us to get us excited. But a Muslim is wise. A Muslim is wise. What this person should have done is that he should have answered the question and moved on. But instead of criticizing, this is what he did. He criticized their religion, and Allah says in the Quran, do not curse other people's religion, people who associate partners with Allah, because in return they will say something disrespectful and negative about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So keeping that in mind, first of all, we have a serious situation in our society where social justice is being, in fact I would say this, that this concept of social justice is disappearing day by day. People who are innocent, people like nowadays, people are going into their home and killing them, and now they are being vilified. That is the society that we're living in today. People who are innocent, they're being vilified. People who are criminals, they're being let go of. They're being viewed as innocent people of the society. We have a great responsibility. When Rasulullah came to Medina, he talked about the Medina charter was all about connecting with his community. He told the Jews that we will be on your side. When you go to war, we will be with you. If we go to war, you will have to be with us. Of course, they betrayed the terms of their agreement, and this is why one by one, not dhulman, not in the form of oppression, but rather because they violated the constitution of Medina, they were exiled and they were removed from Medina. So we do have a responsibility of connecting with our neighbors, connecting with the other religions and other faiths in our community. And at the same time, we have to be respectful. And more than that, when it comes to social justice, we have to always be the very first one there. We as a Muslim community, I'm going to finish on this. We're always talking about others. Wokar liga, he will do it, he will go, she will go. But if we have this mentality, no one's going to show up. We have to be proactive and move forward and be active. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakumullah khairan, barakallahu fikum, Imam Nadeem Bashir. And so, sir, again, the topics that we are tackling, they require a lot of time, but just forgive us because we want to finish on time. By the way, Salatul Isha will move a little bit, inshallah, later, 15 minutes. So we'll pray, inshallah, Salatul Isha tonight, inshallah, at 9:30. Alhamdulillah, Allah blessed ICC and West Plano Masjid with a wonderful Imam Azhar. So Imam Azhar, inshallah, is going to tackle a very important point. Actually, a very important disease that we have it widespread among our Muslim youth, which is the self-defeat. Collectively, we feel that there is a self-defeat that is widespreading. People think that there is no hope for reforming the condition of Muslim Ummah, that we are moving from bad to worse. And this is against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised. And what's happened in Ashura is correcting and is a means and is a dalil that no matter how the enemies are powerful, the most important thing for us is to hold fast to the deen, and the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming. The Muslim should be proud of his deen. This is the point, inshallah, that Imam Azhar will tackle in 5 minutes, which will never happen.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Brothers and sisters in Islam, truly it frustrates me to my core when we use words, but those words have been twisted, they've been manipulated, and there's no head and there's no tail to it. We have become so distracted from the core teachings of our faith that we're ready to throw everyone else under the bus in the name of excuse as to why we are failing. I sympathize especially with youngsters because nowadays the motto in every mosque is we need to build our young generation. We need to empower them. We need to make them leaders. We need to give them that insight and far sight of Islam and the religion and the whole 9 yards, and that's fine. But what about us? What about me? Since one was a masjid about it's my children, but I'm exempted because I'm okay. My wife is exempted because she's okay. My parents are exempted because they're really good, but my kids are a problem. Islam has never been about others, it's been about myself. It's a journey wherein we focus inwards and we focus on rectifying ourselves and bettering ourselves to make us of the caliber to get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the quest and this is a journey and this is the effort of each individual. Not exclusive to the youth, not exclusive to those who come to the masjid, and not exclusive to those who don't come to the masjid. Remember one thing, brothers and sisters. Allah has never promised victory for Muslims as a people. He has promised victory for Islam as the way. Do you understand the difference here? There's a very fine difference here. Just because we feel that we are Muslims doesn't make us any better than anyone outside who's not a Muslim. Doesn't make us on any higher level than those who are the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Until or unless we do our due diligence and make effort on ourselves, as I said, to make ourselves of that level that the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come to us. Yes, there's disparity and there is a state of desperation in the ummah today. You know, we say we're Muslims, but how come Allah's help is not there? Is Allah's help going to come? I talked about this in the khutbah, I think 2 weeks ago, that when we look at the story of Musa alayhi salam, there were 4 stages in his story. There were how many stages? 4 stages in his story. And in Surah Qasas, which means stories, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about one story, and that's the story of Musa alayhi salam. But there are 4 stories within that one story. And this is a gauge and a level for you and I to comprehend where we need to go before we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the help that we're asking. Because the example is that you and I are asking for water, and we're getting this, but the water that we're assuming that we should receive is like a truckload of water, because we want to fight a fire, but what we're receiving, because we're eligible, is only for this much. So the ratio between what we want and what we're getting is because of those 4 levels and our lack of climbing that ladder. Let me quickly go through those 4 levels. Number 1, in the story of Musa alayhi salam, his first stage, when he was a baby and Pharaoh was killing kids, we know the story. Where did he end up at? Everyone? His palace, his front door, Amazon Prime, right in front of his door. Huh? And his wife said, we're not returning this one's good, right? At that stage, he was what I deem as inactive. As a baby, as a child, he couldn't do anything. But despite him being inactive, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help came through and just about scraped him through that time. Allah sent him back to his mom, he nursed, he came back, we know the story. But then when he got to a level of age that he started comprehending things and he wanted to respond to things, he became what we call number 2, reactive. Today the ummah is between these 2 stages. Either we're sitting in the mosque and we're praying, or we're sitting at home because we redid our Hajj. We say, I'm going Jannah. I'm going Jannah, man, don't worry. I'm going Jannah. Go pray namaz. You need to go Jannah. I'm going Jannah. Huh? And we think Allah's help is going to come. Allah's help is already with us, and it's just about getting us through our lives. But it's not the help that's going to help us counter the evilness and the wickedness and the injustice that are happening in our world today. It's not. But what happens is when a Muslim takes that first step, many times we take the reactive step. We're always going to react to things. What happened to Musa alayhi salam in the Qibti? We know that story. He punched the guy and unfortunately he died. And when Musa alayhi salam went back the next day and saw the same person he saved fighting and quarreling with another person, and that person saw the fire in the eyes of Musa alayhi salam, what did he say? أَتُرِيدُ أَن تَقْتُلَنِي كَمَا قَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا بِالْأَمْسِ. You want to kill me now like you killed the guy yesterday? So Musa alayhi salam ran. What happened was, when we remain reactive, we will always fear what's going to come over our shoulders. And that's where the ummah is today. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew the problems of society. He never stood up and protested only. Rather, he dismantled the foundations on which those injustices were founded. And when he dismantled them, there was no discussion, because they lost their head and their tail. So Musa alayhi salam hit rock bottom, where the ummah is today. He said, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. I'm a beggar, Allah. Whatever good you could send me, I need it. So that's when the table turned. And he helped out those 2 girls. And then one of them returned. And she took him back to the father. And then he married. And then he served. This is phase 3. Where all the ummah needs to get to right now is called proactive. Where we are going beyond our personal circle towards working towards a common good. What happened then? He met who? Who did he meet? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make him? A prophet. And then he asked for his brother. Allah made his brother also a prophet. The best thing that one brother could ask for another brother is what Musa alayhi salam asked for Harun, was to make his brother a prophet. And now he goes to Fir'aun. He's proactive. But he went not with this demeanor, I'm better than you and I'll prove it to you. No, I want to shut down all the evils that you're bringing to society. So he went to the level, which is number 4, preventive. Where our presence in the world will prevent the evils and the harms that are happening in the world today. فَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الطُّوفَانَ وَالْجَرَادَ وَالْقُمَّلَ وَالضَّفَادِ وَالدَّمَ آيَاتٍ مُفَصَّلَاتٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent so many signs. What did Pharaoh say? Musa, stop this. Musa, stop this. I'm saying I'm God, and I'm telling Musa, stop this. Why? Because I knew in my heart I'm not God. And then, when Musa a.s. reached the Red Sea, and the Pharaoh was behind him, and I'll end with two things, please. I know I've passed my time. The people of Musa continued to complain. Oh, Musa, what was your problem? What were you thinking? You brought us in the mouth of death. We were better off when we were without you. Remember, people are always going to undermine who you are. But if you don't climb this ladder, you are not going to see Allah's help, and Allah's help is not going to see you. Musa a.s. said something. This is where hope comes in. He said, as Qari Sheikh, my teacher, recited, Inna ma'iya Rabbi, that Allah is with me. In all past nations before Islam, hear me very clearly, the help of Allah was only with the Prophet. And because it was with the Prophet, it spared those who were with the Prophet. Everyone's with me? When Rasulullah was in the cave of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and the enemy was standing right in front urinating, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anh was in a state of despair and huzn and grief, what did Rasulullah say? La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. Don't grieve, Allah's with us. I.e., O Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the help of Allah that was with the prophets and with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is with all of you. This is a distinction for us that no previous nation had. But the question is, are we willing to climb the ladder? In closure, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never pat his back and said, I did this. Rather, he always said, La ilaha illallah wahda, nasara abda, a'azza junda, hazama al-ahzaba wahda. Allah will do. If any Muslim today tells you, I do, we can do, don't follow them. Our path is that we rectify ourselves, and then we become the beacon of hope, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us of the caliber that we will be true game changers. Say inshallah. Inshallah. And in the course of that, we have to re-identify what it means to be people of faith, what faith entails, and what community is. I don't have time right now to talk about that, but inshallah I may address it in the questions. Jazakumullah khair.
By the way, his name is not Azhar Aziz. Okay.
We fixed it. No, there are two names. So the name that is for people, this is the right name. Alhamdulillah. If you are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything will be with you. And if you are not with Allah, then nothing will benefit you. إذا كنت مع الله فكل شيء معك وإذا لم تكن مع الله فلا شيء ينفعك. We will move to a wonderful topic, and with our beloved Imam Arsalan. Subhanallah, the brothers or the sisters, they didn't wait, and actually they sent us a text talking about the martyrdom of Al-Imam Al-Hussein. 30 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the Ummah was grieved because of the death, due to the death of Al-Hussein, and we know all the story. But our youth and our children, they should know that we are a moderate Ummah, and we should not go to the extremes. Nobody better than Imam Arsalan to tackle this topic, and there's like the same blood runs in the same body, because we both graduated from Al-Azhar, so I feel that he's the closest Imam to me. He graduated like 10 or 12 years from Al-Azhar University, but I love him for the sake of Allah, and we always give benefit of his wonderful comments. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from him.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Actually, to be honest with you, I don't think that our youth know much about the martyrdom of Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu. I don't think we talk about this topic in Sunday school. We never get beyond the seerah. We don't even talk about Khulafa al-Rashideen. So how are we going to get to the tragedy of Karbala And then with the taboo that surrounds this story, I grew up in this country. I went to Sunday school, never heard of this. It was also always a Shia topic. But I think that we do need to educate everyone, including our youth and our adults, about this topic. We love the household of the Prophet ﷺ. We love the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Even though we fall short in expressing that love, and we ask Allah's forgiveness for that, but we as Sunni Muslims, if we love the Prophet ﷺ, how can we not love his family? And his family consists of his daughter, Sayyidah Fatima, and her husband, Sayyidina Ali, and their children, Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein, and Aisha, and Salama, and Hafsa. These are all part of the family of the Prophet ﷺ. I don't have time to tell you about what happened during the massacre of Karbala in these 4 minutes that I have left, or 3 minutes. But very quickly, inshallah, because I know that many of you don't know what happened. So before I can talk about what lessons we can derive from this, I have to just give a brief summary of what happened in 2 minutes. Basically, Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu appointed his son Yazid to be the next Khalifa. And Sayyidina Hussein was asked to give the Pledge of Allegiance to him. But he stood up against this because he felt that this was unjust, because he believed that this was wrong. So he stood up against an injustice. He showed civil disobedience. He refused to give the Pledge of Allegiance to what he believed to be an oppressive regime. Why? Because he believed that this was an unfair choice for the people. Because this is not the way that the leader of the Muslims is supposed to be chosen. We don't believe in kingship. It's supposed to be shura between the Muslims. 30,000 people from Kufa, from the land of Iraq, wrote letters, thousands of letters, to Sayyidina Hussein, inviting him to Kufa and promising him that they will support him in his stance against Yazid. But after they sent him all of these letters and made all of these promises, they succumbed to the threats and the bribes of Ibn Ziyad, who was appointed as the leader of Kufa by Yazid. And these people of Kufa, under the threats and under the bribes, betrayed the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ. When the final confrontation happened at Karbala between Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Sayyidina Hussein gave him three noble options to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. What were the options? Number one, let me go back to Mecca. I won't fight. I won't revolt. Let me go back to where I came from. Number two, if you don't want to do that, let me go to Yazid and negotiate with him directly. I will go alone. I will not take anybody with me. Number three, let me go to any of the land of the Muslims. Any of the land of the Muslims. But Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he refused all of these options. He demanded one thing. Who was he? He was a nobody, a 28-year-old, young, hot-headed, foolish, arrogant, oppressive, corrupt military leader who was appointed by Yazid. What does he demand from the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ? You have to come to me and bow your head and kiss my hand. Sayyidina Hussein was too noble to succumb to this. He was a man of dignity, a man of honor, and he did not succumb to that pressure. He only had about 100 civilians with him, unarmed, and he was faced by an army of about 1,000 people. But he didn't fear them. He stood his ground, and then what happened, happened. We as Sunni Muslims do not commemorate this day to just lament and mourn over this tragedy. Even though no Muslim can remember this story without feeling sad. How can you? But instead, what we do is we commemorate the shahada of Sayyidina Hussein in the path of Allah Azza wa Jalla, his martyrdom. And we learn from what he did. We learn from his martyrdom, his standing up for justice. We learn from that how victory is truly defined, how glory is truly defined, how success is truly defined. Because in the material sense, we may say that he was defeated, that he was humiliated, that he failed to achieve materially what he wanted to. But truly, who was victorious? Who was the glorious? And who was successful? He redefined all of these things for us. And today we commemorate, or on the day of Ashura, we commemorate the life of Sayyidina Hussein, because he stood for justice, because he pursued the truth, because he was a man of honor and a man of dignity. And I'll close with this, inshallah ta'ala, because my time is way up. We need to ask ourselves these questions. What will we do in the face of pressure? And there's a lot of pressure that we face today in 21st century America as Muslims living in this country. What will we do in the face of pressure? Will we stand up for the truth? Will we stand up for our values? Or are we going to succumb to the pressures for worldly gains, for material success? Jazakumullah khair.
Nobody wants Imam Rasalan to finish. So inshallah, Imam inshallah Mufti Wasim will tell us about inshallah the way to inshallah send the messages, because we will have only inshallah around 20 minutes for answering the questions.
So, if you haven't already subscribed to our text updates, take out your phones, please. Open your text messages and input the number 81010. In the message area, you're going to type in the @ sign, MECCA, MECCA, DFW, and then send it. This will subscribe you onto our text update list, so we can tell you about our different programs. Every month, the programs we have will update you. At the same time, this allows you to send questions to us. The questions you send from the crowd, we will answer them, inshallah, because we will not be taking live questions.
No. We will just allow people to send messages through the system and the way that we just mentioned.
Yeah, e-fatwas only. So please do utilize this service. Take out your phones, send the questions, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. If they're good questions, we'll answer them. If they're not, we'll just ignore them.
Just to know, to add something very important, our scholar said something very wonderful. This is حسن السؤال نصف الجواب. So the good question is half of the answer. So please, inshallah, send the questions that are related to our topic. And as I said, tonight we are exploring treasures. Every imam tackled wonderful points that each one wants a night to talk about it for hours. So please, the topics that we tackled are really important, so ask questions related to that, inshallah. And also you can decide whom you should answer your question if you like. So inshallah, we will end with our beloved Mufti Wasim and tackling a very important topic. Sometimes as individuals, we lose hope. Not collectively, but individually. So, imagine what happened to Musa alayhi salam. He was going to the east side, the sea is in front of him, and the kids and the women, the weak women and the kids, they are at his feet crying out, what are we gonna do? The Pharaoh is coming, try to help. Musa alayhi salam has hope and was a productive Muslim, and he says, as Sheikh Abdullah recited, كَلَّا إِنَّ مَعِيَ رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينَ, Allah is with me, He will guide me. And with the cane, subhanAllah, happened the miracles. The brothers and sisters in our community, in our community, in the United States, everywhere in the world, the 40 million people who are trying to commit suicide, who are suffering from depression and anxiety and worse. How come we feel sad and depressed while we have a history like this? Allah is able to do the impossible. إِنَّ اللَّهَ إِذَا أَعْطَى أَدْهَشْ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives, He astonishes. How come we feel sad and we are worshipping Allah and making dua to Allah who called Himself Al-Wahhab? That's why Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam, when he asked Allah, he asked Him something that is impossible to happen. قال رب هب لي ملكا لا ينبغي لأحد من بعدي. Allah grant me a kingdom that no one after me will have. And Allah gave him what he wanted. From our beloved Imam Wasim, we will, inshallah, let him shed the light on the depression and the worries that are in the hearts of Muslims and how to overcome this based on what came from the story of Musa.
Just to let you all know that the scholars are not on their phone just texting or sharing memes or something, but they are coordinating with one another in regards to the questions and who will take what questions that are coming. Before I begin, I just want to say one thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to us, and the Prophet of Allah said, name your children good names because the names have an effect. Every one of us has a beautiful name. Imam Azhar. Azhar means to be someone that is apparent, and as you see him, he just grasps your eyesight. MashaAllah, he has a lot of finesse, a lot of style. Imam Nadim Bashir, MashaAllah, Bashir is someone who is happy, someone who is pleased, and as you look at him, all you see is pleasure. Sheikh Arsalan is a lion. He's dressed yellow. He's got the color going on, and then the beard as well, MashaAllah, the stripes as well. Imam Abdul Rahman Bashir, also, he's just like Imam Nadim Bashir. Sometimes I get confused who is who between the two of them. Wasim means very, very beautiful. You can already see that. Sheikh Jibali.
No, it is. No, there is nothing good in that.
This is a jabal of knowledge. This is a jabal of shafaqah. A mountain of knowledge, a mountain of shafaqah, a mountain of compassion, a mountain of wisdom, and a mountain of blessing. And out of the greatest honors I have in this city is to be in the mentorship and in the shade of this sheikh.
I'll give him extra 2 minutes.
And I'll just give you a quick example, and I know I'm hitting my time, but I will shorten my time. A few days ago, a youngster came and he mentioned a story of Sheikh Jibali in the masjid, of how one brother was stepping outside and the sheikh stopped him and said, stay for a few minutes, for what I have to say will benefit you, inshallah. The brother, out of respect for the sheikh, sat down, but the sheikh didn't stop there. At the end, he made dua for him, his parents, his children, his wife, his whole family. And he came back, mashallah. Forget about how that brother must have felt. I was left humble just hearing that story. And I called the sheikh today and I said, Sheikh, wallahi, what you are doing in McKinney, don't think that there's few people in front of you, but you are shaking hearts across the city. And we are learning from your experience. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the sheikh a long and a healthy and blessed life, and allow his shade to be upon us. He is a great mufti, a great scholar, and don't get lost in his mountain of humility. For the likes of him, very few can see. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, inshallah.
No questions, inshallah. Till Asha, we are with brother.
The question I was given is about hope. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ajaban li amri al-mu'min inna amrahu kullahu lahu khair. In asabathu sarra shakara fakana khayran lah. In asabathu dharra fasabara fakana khayran lah." The Prophet of Allah says, "Ajaban li amri al-mu'min." The believer is very unique. In asabathu sarra, good times, he is grateful to Allah, she is grateful to Allah, they are rewarded for it. وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ ضَرَّاء فَصَبَرَ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. And if difficulties touch them, and difficulties come across them, and they are patient, and they have hope in Allah, Allah will reward them. Imam Qurtubi rahimahullah, the great Kurdobian scholar, he describes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allama Bajuri rahimahullah mentions this in his Shama'il al-Muhammadiyya, his commentary on Tirmidhi. He says, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم متواصل الأحزان. He said the man didn't have one difficulty. متواصل. It was one after another, after another, after another grief. The Prophet of Allah is denied, he is belied, he is beaten, he is hurt, he is tortured. Then when the year of difficulty comes, Allah takes his wife away, Khadija radiallahu anha. Within a week, in some riwayat, within 5 days, Abu Talib also passed, or Abu Talib passed away first, and within 5 days, Khadija radiallahu anha passed away. In the same week, Allah is the writer of this story. Fatima radiallahu anha says about the Prophet's demise, and this poem can be fit upon any situation. She says, وَلَقَدْ صُبَّتْ عَلَيَّ مَصَائِبُ لَوْ صُبَّتْ عَلَى الْأَيَّامِ لَسِرْنَا لَيَالِيَا. She says the difficulties that were poured upon me, they weren't touched. Subbat, they were poured. You were drowning in the water, trying to find a closure, trying to find some sort of protection. She was drowned, and the Prophet of Allah were drowned in difficulty. لَوْ صُبَّتْ عَلَى الْأَيَّامِ لَسِرْنَا لَيَالِيَا. If a drop of those difficulties were shed upon the day would become perpetually night, and the sun would never rise. Despite all of this, you look into this life of the man who was the Habib of Allah. Allah loved him. Allah قَرَنَ اللَّهِ بِإِسْمِهِ إِسْمَهُ. Allah joined his name with his name. لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ مُحَمَّدٌ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Someone asked, Ibrahim is Khalilullah, Musa is Kalimullah, Isa is Ruhullah, Adam is Safiyullah. Who is Muhammad Rasulullah? Muhammad, your name is with Allah's name. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. You reflect into his life and you realize difficulties touch every single person. Just because you're going through a difficult time in your life does not mean Allah doesn't like you. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. دع الأيام تفعل ما تشاء وطب نفسا إذا حكم القضاء ولا تجزع لحادثة الليالي فما لحوادث الدنيا بقاء وكن رجلا على الأهوال جلدا وشيمتك السماحة والوفاء وإن كثرت عيوبك في البرايا تستر بالسخاء فكل عيب يغطيه كما طيل السخاء. The giant Shafi'i has a very long poem on this, but I just want to interpret the first few lines. Da'il ayyam, let the days go by. Taf'al ma tasha. However situation you are in, you have a breakup, you have a heartache, you lost your job, you lost your family member. These are easy things to say. The first day, the difficulty is very hard. Da'il ayyam, these days will move on. Taf'al ma tasha. وَطِبَ نَفْسًا إِذَا حَكَمَ الْقَضَاء. This is the qada of your Allah. طِبَ نَفْسًا. You only have two choices. Either be pleased or displeased. But the qada of Allah doesn't change. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. You can't change the qada. You only have one choice. Be pleased with the qada of Allah and your statuses will raise and you will have contentment in your heart. Be displeased with the qada of Allah and your heart will break away and will be wrenched away. And neither will you have Allah, neither will you have that thing. As a believer, what did the Prophet of Allah say? You never lose hope. You never lose hope. That if the trumpet is blown and you have a sapling in your hand, a seed in your hand, the believer is the one that still puts the seed down and hopes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. that even despite the trump being blown. So I leave you off with one narration of Tabrani that is mawquf upon Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, because when we speak on the son of Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, Ahl al-Bayt, I want to also make my mouth mu'attar and blessed and pleasant with the mention of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu as well. And people ask, difficulties come, how do I break away from these difficulties? How is it that the Prophet and these people, there were certain Sahaba, they didn't have a hand. Abbad ibn Uthman was half paralyzed. Talha bin Abu Talha radiallahu anhu's hand was completely like a strainer. That's how many arrows had pierced his hand. Sahaba didn't have an eye, tooth broken, but these people were so happy. Today my phone cracks. I lose some messages, text messages. Someone blocks me on Instagram because I started sliding to their DMs. And my heart is broken. And my heart is broken. They have one thing in their life. And if you have that in your life, then your heart will never be broken. سُئِلَ عَلِيُّ بْنَ أَبِي طَالِبٍ مَا أَقْوَى جُنُودِ اللَّهِ. What is the most powerful of the creations of Allah? فَقَالَ الْجِبَالِ. He said the mountain is the most greatest and the biggest, and you won't find something greater and bigger than the mountain. ثُمَّ قَالَ الْحَدِيدِ. But you know what? Iron is more powerful than mountains, because iron can chisel mountain. ثُمَّ قَالَ النَّارِ أَقْوَى مِنَ الْحَدِيدِ. Well, you know what? Wait. Fire is more powerful than iron, for fire can melt iron. ثُمَّ قَالَ الْمَاءِ أَقْوَى مِنَ النَّارِ. Well, you know what? Water is more powerful than fire, for water can extinguish fire. ثُمَّ قَالَ الْهَوَاءِ أَقْوَى مِنَ الْمَاءِ. Well, wait. Wind is more powerful than water, for wind can blow that water away and send it to another city. ثُمَّ قَالَ الْإِنسَانِ أَقْوَى مِنَ الْهَوَاءِ. Well, you know what? Mankind is more powerful than wind and rain and all of these things, for we can build a structure that can deflect this. ثُمَّ قَالَ mankind has intellect, he has purpose. Al-Khamar. But when they drink and they forget Allah, then this alcohol is more powerful than mankind. ثُمَّ قَالَ النَّوْمُ أَقْوَى مِنَ الْخَمَرِ. How does a person get over being drunk, the hangover? The Prophet Ali radiallahu anhu says, sleep is more powerful than being drunk, for that will overpower and make you forget that drunkenness. ثُمَّ قَالَ الْهَمْ أَقْوَى مِنَ النَّوْمِ. You could have a $5,000 Tempur-Pedic memory foam mattress with cooling gel that massages you in a $500,000 million home. But when you put your head on the pillow, if there are worries in your mind, then that sleep will never come to you. So he starts with the mountain, and he starts with one worry that you can't even see, and that wipes everything away. ثُمَّ قَالَ الذكر أقوى من الهم ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. It is the remembrance of Allah and connecting with Allah where you have hope. And when you see when something is lost, you realize نحن أبناء الآخرة ولسنا أبناء الدنيا. We are children of the Akhirah. We were never meant for this dunya. Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah, now we'll start answering some of the questions. We'll start with Imam Salam. Imam Abdurrahman.
Yes, sir.
Inshallah, we'll start with answering the questions with you, inshallah. Read and answer the questions.
So, I'll start with the first question, just so that while the scholars are picking up some of the questions, inshallah. The brother asked, is there any Quranic ayah or any mention of hadith or something that prohibits drugs and prohibits any type of, alcohol or, not alcohol, he said drugs. The Arabic word khamar literally comes from khimar. Khimar is a scarf. And khamar is called khamar because just as a scarf covers your head, khamar covers your aql. It covers your intellect. So anything that dims your aql is in reality considered khamar. There's a hadith in Abu Dawood in Kitab al-Tib, where the Prophet in Kitab al-Ashura, where the Prophet ﷺ says, كُلُّ مُسْكِرٍ وَمُثْقِنٍ حَرَامٍ. Any intoxicant, anything that dims your mind, haram. It's done, haram. Don't be like, well, you know what? No, but the high is different, and it's no. Haram. Allah, there's only two possibilities. Either you are ghafil of Allah or you are arif of Allah. Either you are in the state where you are connected to Allah or you are ghafil of Allah. And anything that makes you ghafil of Allah is mal'oon. الدنيا ملعونة وملعون ما فيها إلا عالم والمتعلم وذكر الله وما والاه. Everything in this dunya is wretched and cursed besides four things: the alim, the scholar, the student, the dhikr of Allah, and whatever is connected to that.
So inshallah, 1 minute for every question, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, we'll manage it quickly, inshallah. One short answer, inshallah, 1 minute for every question, inshallah. Something is left over, I can take it away. So let me just announce something, inshallah, that we will do after Isha, inshallah. Inshallah, we'll pray Isha, inshallah, at 9:30, and now, inshallah, inshallah, the adhan will be said, inshallah, after we answer this question. And then, inshallah, we'll continue after Isha for half an hour for everyone who's interested. I know it's late, but, we want to get benefit of our scholars and our imams, so half an hour is not going to affect, inshallah. So please, inshallah, if you stay with us, inshallah, half an hour.
Takbir loudly if you're going to stay half an hour. Takbir.
That's not what and also, because you said takbir loud, alhamdulillah, there are snacks and also, inshallah, tea, inshallah. So, inshallah, after the answer of Imam Azhar, we'll, inshallah, announce the adhan, then we'll pray, inshallah, Imam Nadim, Bashir will lead the salah, and immediately, inshallah, we will have, inshallah, 30 minutes for answering the questions, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair wa barak. Tafadhal, Imam Azhar.
There's many questions that have come through. There's one question here I just want to touch upon. Can we have more dialogue regarding topics that we as Sunnis do not learn while in Sunday school, such as Ahlul Bayt? Of course, I think, as I was alluding to before, that we are not a people that draw hard lines in the sand and create craters between each other. It is imperative for us to understand that the love of the family of Rasulullah is something that both the Sunni community and the Shia community share. I think we need to just talk about it a bit more than we did in the past, and we need to educate our children that the love of the family of Rasulullah is because of their sacrifice and their selfless commitment towards the cause of goodness, something which was greater than themselves. And so, as members of the community, I think it's imperative that we work collectively on the issues that we have within our community, with our scholars, with our masajid, to empower our children and ourselves and our families to better address the problems that we are facing in our world today. We'll just leave it to that. There's many other questions, and Jazakumullah khair.
Inshallah, before the adhan, I just want to remind you all, the MECCA program, basically the 5 Collin County Masajid, Epic, Plano, Allen, Frisco, and McKinney Masjid, every month another masjid takes the opportunity of hosting all the imams. So this happens monthly. You get updates by signing up on that text number. Next month, inshallah, is Frisco's turn. That's basically me. On October 19th, at Maghrib time, we will, and whatever the leftover questions are, we will carry them on over there, inshallah. So October 19th, Maghrib, Frisco will be hosting the next event. The topic is Halloween, Jinn, Ruqya, Sihr, magic, possession, and all of those topics, inshallah. So if you want to see a live exorcism, I'm just kidding. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah. The adhan will be pronounced now, inshallah. We'll move the tables because we'll get back, inshallah.